Hi, everyone. Welcome to FSMA Friday. We are going to wait a few minutes so that we can get all the attendees on before we get started. But I'm super excited to see you all. Happy Halloween. Hello, everyone. Hello again. Hi, Paolo. We are starting now. Thank you for letting all of the other attendees join. Welcome to FSMA Friday. We are going to go over nudges, habits, and pure power, applying behavioral science to food safety. I am so excited to, actually, sorry, before I introduce my guest, uh, what is FSMA Fridays, right? It's a monthly FSMA related news, regulation changes and updates, industry trends, Q&A with TAG, and we have one of our great speakers here today from TAG. Just some things before we get started. Only panelist microphones are on. So ask questions in the chat in different places, but we will answer all the Q&A at the end. I want to make sure Mary has the bandwidth and everything to get through her content. There will be a recording link that we will share post webinar. And then if you have any audio issues, please use the call-in number. So as I was mentioning, I'm super excited to introduce Mary. Mary comes from the Acheson group. She has nearly 20 years of experience in food industry. She's held various positions in technical and managerial roles within these companies. She specializes specifically in manufacturing food safety and quality. She's worked with compliance, regulatory, GFSI, and customer requirements as well. Mary, wave to the group, and then we will get started from there. I'll hand it over to you, Mary.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me back on FSMA Friday. It's always great to get together and talk about what's happening in the industry. So as always, we'll start with some regulatory updates. So first of all, FDA's public meeting and listening session on food allergen thresholds has been postponed due to the government shutdown. So these meetings had been scheduled for November of this year, and new dates have not been announced yet. So keep an eye on that if that's something that's of interest to you. Next up is the ultra processed foods. So California has signed a first in the nation law to legally define ultra processed foods and also to phase out the most harmful ones from California public school meals by 2032. So, according to this law, a food is considered ultra processed if it is high in saturated fat, added sugar, or sodium, and contains a food additive such as artificial flavor, artificial color, emulsifier, or thickening agent. So, on a national level, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has identified ultra processed foods as a central focus of its Make America Healthy Again, or MAHA initiative. And California's recent enactment of this law represents the first time ultra-processed foods have been formally defined in a regulatory context in the United States, which can be considered a significant step towards translating MAHA's policy goals into state-level action. And then finally, in its efforts to increase transparency, the FDA has shared some more in-depth information on outbreak investigations by providing access to two new resources that I've got listed on the slide here. The first one is the Executive Incident Summary abstracts. So these will be released following the close of every completed FDA foodborne outbreak investigation when there's no longer an ongoing risk to the public. So these abstracts will share as much information as possible about the investigations, including overview of traceback, laboratory and epidemiological information, keeping in mind that the information will be redacted to comply with disclosure laws. But the abstracts will be accessed on the new EIS landing page on the FDA website. And then the second one is the Foodborne Outbreak Overview of Data Reports, or food reports. These will provide information on pathogen commodity pairs linked to repeated outbreaks of foodborne illness, such as hepatitis A in berries or salmonella in tahini. So these reports will include highlights of relevant data and investigational findings, along with activities that have been taken to help prevent future similar foodborne illnesses. So the foods reports will be released whenever there's enough data to support their development, and these will be available on the food reports landing page of the FDA website. All right, next slide, please. So we'll get into our topic for today. So applying behavioral science to food safety. So many of us who have had roles in food safety and quality have experienced the struggles of implementing programs, plans, procedures on a daily basis. So the best laid plans always rely on the people who are doing the work to do the right things, like even when no one's looking. So even if we aren't trained behavioral scientists, we can turn to basic principles from that discipline to bridge the gaps between what we say we do and what we actually do. Next slide, please. Okay, so as Peter Drucker once famously said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So, in any organizational setting, not just food manufacturing, that means if the environment, norms, and habits of a workplace don't support the behavior your strategy depends on, it won't stick. So, our goal is to design systems and cues that make the right behaviors the cultural default. So, when implementing our food strategy, it's crucial that we focus on both the formal plan and the human element, addressing mindset and behavior changes as critical components of success. Next slide. So, this COM-B model, I think of this as sort of behavioral science 101. But this model was developed by Susan Michie and others as part of this behavior change wheel framework. So COM-B identified three essential components that must be present for any behavior to occur. So that's the COM, the capability, opportunity, and motivation. So the model has become one of the most widely cited frameworks in applied behavioral science, and is used in public health, organizational behavior, and also food safety culture and leadership contexts. So we have definitions of each of those here, along with a brief example in a food safety context of hand washing. So the C is, again, capability, and that is an individual's capability to engage in the behavior, so including knowledge, skills, and mental resources. An example of this is employees knowing how to wash their hands properly and why it matters. And then next is opportunity. So these are the external factors that make the behavior possible or that prompt it. So these can include environmental, social, and systemic conditions. So an example of this is having those hand washing stations conveniently located, visible, and well stocked, and also having peers and supervisors model the desired hand washing behavior. And then motivation, these are internal processes that energize and direct the behavior. So, an employee, in our example, the employee believes that hand washing prevents contamination, and it's really considered a part of how we do things here. Next slide. So, understanding all of this, we're going to look at three tools or levers that we can use to impact behaviors, and we'll have some examples of how to apply these in a food safety setting. So, these levers are nudges, habits, and peer power. Next slide. All right, beginning with nudges. So, if COM-B helps us understand why people behave in a certain way, nudges can help us shape how those behaviors unfold in real life. So, the term nudge in this context comes from a book called Nudge Improving Decisions About Health, Wealth, and Happiness. And those authors explain that nudges influence behavior by changing the environment or context in which people make choices. So a nudge works by shaping how people encounter those decision-making points, and it leverages automatic thinking rather than deliberate reasoning. So even small environmental cues can shift default behavior. And we give some classic examples of using nudges to influence behavior. So this includes placing fruit at eye level instead of kind of banning potato chips if you're trying to nudge healthier eating behaviors. Also, those speed display radar signs that show you how fast you're going compared to the speed limit to prompt you to slow down. Also, painted targets that are put inside urinals sometimes to reduce spillage are all considered examples of nudges. Next slide, please. So this chart shows how nudges can impact the COM-B elements that we discussed earlier. So in terms of capability, nudges influence capability by making the correct action clearer or simpler to execute. An example of this could be visual prompts to show how to use personal protective equipment appropriately. Nudges can impact opportunity by restructuring your environment so the desired behavior becomes the default. An example of this is placing footwear sanitizing stations directly in the physical entry path to production so that employees physically just must step through the station in order to proceed into that area. And then motivation, so using social norms, feedback, or emotional triggers to reinforce behavior. An example of this is a timer or a light that appears when hand washing duration reaches 20 seconds or whatever your procedure says is the appropriate amount of time. Next slide, please. So I've listed some additional practical examples of how nudges can impact food safety behavior. I won't read the entire slide to you, but I wanted to give you additional examples for reference when you're thinking about and brainstorming ideas for impacting behavior in your organization. So feel free to take a picture or a screenshot of this slide if that'll be helpful. But we'll just highlight a couple here. So putting footprints or arrows on the floor to indicate the desired traffic pattern in a facility makes the correct route the visible and automatic route. So driving that desired behavior of following those traffic patterns. Also, color-coded floor zones or boundary lines indicating this is a clean versus a dirty area in the facility, or using color-coded tools and utensils indicating either raw versus ready to eat use, or maybe for different allergen types, which already, many of you are likely already using something like this, but it's good to think about, well, this could be considered a nudge to drive the right behavior, which is using separate tools and utensils to prevent cross-contamination. So remember, a nudge doesn't change the policy, it changes the path of least resistance. So when it's designed well, it makes the safe choice the easy, natural, and automatic one. Next slide. So I've laid out a few steps. So if you want to work on this in your organization, so first you want to define the behavior. So what specifically is happening that is outside of the desired behavior? Next, you want to think about the barriers. Like, why is this hard for people to do? Or what motivates people to do something different than what we've communicated that we want them to do? Next, you'll redesign the context or make the desired choice obvious and effortless, and position cues where the decisions happen. Next, you want to reinforce with feedback. So small moments of satisfaction that will encourage them to continue. Once they've done that, they'll want to continue to doing the right thing. And then last, test, measure, and refine. Really think about starting with one small thing, working on that, tinkering with that until it works, and then move on to the next. Remember that the goal is to align the environment with the desired behavior so the right action is easy. Next slide. Okay, so the next lever we can use to impact behavior is habits, or making the right thing automatic. Once habits are formed, they're triggered by cues, not necessarily by conscious decision making. So some classic examples of this is brushing your teeth before bed, you just kind of automatically do that based on the daily time cue. I'm getting ready for bed. This is just part of what I do. Or putting on a seatbelt automatically when getting into your car. Or maybe it's checking your phone first thing in the morning, maybe even before you get out of bed, right? So keep in mind that habits can result in positive or negative behaviors. So in a food facility, they should be designed intentionally to drive consistency in those desired behaviors. Next slide, please. So again, I've tied this lever habits again to that COM-B model. So we'll take a look at that. So habits can strengthen capability by reinforcing learned actions until they become automatic. So an example of this is practicing the correct gowning steps every day until it becomes reflexive. And I think of this example in cases where sometimes there's kind of a complicated gowning procedure where maybe you have to sit on a bench and take your shoes off and flip your foot over to the other side, right? It's a little challenging at first for some people when they haven't done that before. So you can like let's do it together every day until you've just got it. Now it's reflexive. It's part of the habit that you have each day when you enter that processing area. Also, habits can impact opportunity, where stable environments and cues trigger the habit loop. So you want to have your environment and those cues be the same so that people just automatically associate the desired behavior with something that naturally happens throughout the day. An example of this can be having consistent entry sequence requirements at every entrance to the processing areas. So first I gown, then I wash my hands, then I sanitize my hands. And then motivation. So positive reinforcement turns behaviors into routine satisfaction. An example, employees routinely sanitize their work area at the end of shift because the visual cue of a clean workspace feels rewarding. Excuse me, next slide, please. So again, I've provided some additional practical examples of how habits can impact food safety behavior. Again, feel free to take a picture or screenshot if that will be helpful for you. We'll talk about just a couple. So recording a cooler temperature at break change. So anchoring that behavior to a predictable moment in the shift. So let's say you decided we need to record the temperatures of this cooler 3 times per shift. How can we make sure people are going to remember to do that and make that part of their day? Likely people aren't going to forget to take their breaks, right? So if they're taking a morning break, a lunch break, and an afternoon break, you could potentially tie those temperature checks to those moments throughout their shift to make it a habit. Also, inspecting utensils after cleaning and before they're stored. So the habit can be embedded in that cleanup sequence, right? You just want to make sure that those utensils are inspected, they're in good repair before they're used, but working it into that cleanup sequence can make it a habit, something that people just sort of automatically do. So remember that strong habits form when the cue stays consistent. So the place, the time, the sequence will tell the brain what to do next eventually without even having to give a reminder. Next slide, please. Okay, so a few steps to designing and strengthening habits. So first, again, identify the routine behavior that you want to occur automatically. Next, establish a clear cue. So link that to a consistent signal, a place, a time, or a sequence. Next, simplify the behavior. Make the correct step the easy one. We just talked about this in nudges. So there is some overlap here, but make that, as you're helping people to develop the right habits, you making it the easiest, the path of least resistance will make that easier to do. Next, reinforce and reward. So celebrate consistency and small wins. And then monitor and adjust. So if things change, those habit cues might need to be reestablished. Remember that repetition builds confidence and reward maintains it. Next slide, please. All right, the last lever we're going to discuss for impacting behavior is peer power. So, peer power is the influence of social norms, visibility, and group identity on behavior. So, rules tell people what they should do, while peer norms show what people like them actually do. So, impacting social norms is very powerful because it makes the desired behavior kind of the expected behavior in that group setting. Next slide, please. So here again is that COM-B model, but now we're looking at peer power. So peer power can strengthen capability through shared learning and peer modeling to reinforce skills. An example of this is having experienced operators mentor new employees during their onboarding period. Opportunity, so social and cultural expectations make behaviors visible and valued. So an example of this could be having teams discuss food safety metrics at daily huddles. So normalize the attention to food safety and normalizing conversations around that. And then motivation. So approval, recognition, and group pride actually can drive commitment. So an example of this, employees work together to strive to maintain their team's zero deviation streak on their food safety dashboard is another example. So remember, peer power turns individual compliance into collective culture. Next slide, please. Okay, here again are a few practical examples of how peer power can impact food safety behavior. We'll highlight a couple again. So, use of recognition boards. So, highlight employees who you kind of caught doing the right thing. Using buddy systems, pairing new hires with role model employees to exhibit kind of that desired behavior. Obviously, important to make sure that the mentor that you're choosing and selecting is really all in on food safety behaviors so you can make sure that you're driving what you want to drive. Remember, when good behavior is visible, it becomes contagious. Next slide. A few steps to follow when designing and strengthening peer power in your organization. So, first, identify those visible moments where peer behaviors can be seen or recognized. Number two, make the norms explicit, like use shared language. This is how we do things around here. Number three, reinforce positively. Celebrate those who model the right actions. Number four, enable peer feedback. So train your teams to give constructive coaching to each other um, in terms of food safety. Like, hey, your glove touched the floor. It's time to change it out. So ideally, this would become kind of part of the personality of the group that they can talk to each other and give real-time coaching on food safety. And then last, create cycles of visibility and pride. So let the team see themselves being successful in these efforts. And remember that culture is built not by rules, but by what peers notice, celebrate, and repeat. Next slide. All right, in summary, these are the key takeaways from today's discussion. So nudges make the right behavior easy. Habits make the right behavior automatic. And peer power makes the right behavior expected. And culture really emerges when all of these elements align. Next slide. All right, finally, I'll leave you with a simple call to action after we finish up today. So if you want to start addressing behaviors in your organization, I suggest to start small. So based on our discussion, just pick one behavior to nudge, one habit to reinforce, or one process to redesign so that the safe action is the path of least resistance. Then recognize and celebrate visible peer modeling to reinforce those positive norms. Again, start small, test it out, try it, modify it, repeat as needed as you continue this ongoing journey of strengthening your food safety culture at your organization. Next slide.
Hi, everyone. Oh, let me get my screen back too. So we are ready to take questions for Mary. Any questions from the group here that we have come in? Jana, did people use the Q&A button for some of these questions? So one question that I have is, Mary, how do KPIs fit into this model that you have here?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So KPIs can fit perfectly in this discussion about behaviors and nudging behaviors and driving the desired behaviors, particularly if they're designed to measure the things that you want people to do rather than kind of the outcomes of the program. So I'll give you an example to explain what I mean there. If we design more of some of our metrics to measure leading behaviors, such as completing our master sanitation schedules or conducting our CAPA and investigations within a certain time frame, then making those things that the team is working towards certain targets and in relation to those behaviors, that's where we really can impact that peer power. So we're all encouraging one another to do the right things so that we can hit those targets.
Perfect. And then we have a question in from David Baxter. Great presentation, he says, Mary, thank you. What are some ways to measure food safety behavior, surveys, direct observation?
Thank you. Very good question. Thank you, David. At the Acheson Group, we have done quite a bit of work and we continue to do work with our clients in relation to food safety culture and measuring that. And we know that it's tricky. It's different than a lab test where you get a quick certain result. But we do use a combination of things like you mentioned. You can do those surveys where you're asking people for their perceptions about food safety behaviors. We do tend to think of those as a measurement of the food safety climate. So a point in time, this is how people were feeling. So we like to use that as part of our measurement and use that in combination with, again, how are we delivering against those food safety programs that we've got in place? Are we executing those according to plan? And also, we'll use interviews where we talk to members of different functional areas in an organization and give them some more kind of open-ended questions about food safety behaviors. And it's important, even when you're considering if you're going to try to develop some nudges, habits, these things we just talked about, have those conversations with different functional areas on the team. So if you're having trouble with people not following the correct traffic pattern, talk to them about it. Like, what makes this hard? What would make it easier? So that together you can remove those roadblocks and continue to encourage the desired behaviors.
Oh, I love that. It's always good to ask your team how can we jointly get better together, right? Another question in from Federica. Are there risks of nudge fatigue, right? And how can we keep interventions fresh and meaningful?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So if you walk in and there's 27 signs telling you all these different things, it might all become a blur. So that's a really great point. Um, they say that the best designed nudges really happen where the decision making happens. So I think being very deliberate about where, if it's a visual reminder, for example, put that exactly at that spot where that decision is going to happen and try to maybe eliminate some of the other things that are more general messaging, for example, to a different location. And we also think about like, let's keep it fresh. Let's change it out from time to time, even if it's the same message. Maybe we change the graphics, the visuals, because eventually, we see it so often, we just kind of might not see it at all. Great point. Thank you.
Yeah, like just changing out the color background on the same message on a poster and then putting up a new poster.
You
Another
know,
question that
oh,
go ahead.
something I see is when companies want to make sure people are using their PPE correctly, for example. So make sure your hairnet's going over your ears and your mustache and beard are fully in. Sometimes people struggle with that. So I'll see they'll put a picture of someone who works there right on the door wearing the PPE appropriately. So it's kind of fun. Like, hey, there's Mary's picture up on the wall. So then you could simply switch that out with another person. Everybody kind
Ah,
of gets a chance to model the right behavior, and can be kind of fun and silly too if that's sort of the tone of your group.
well, it was kind of, if you think about if anyone's flown Delta Airlines recently, right? They've really changed up their videos and they've made them different every time to try and engage the audience. So, completely. This one's along the same lines from Shauna Flores. She says, "Thank you for the presentation as well. And how do you prevent complacency over time?"
Yeah, I think it's another great point. I think it's similar. Um, Sometimes we all just get pretty comfortable with the way things are. We're in the same environment all the time, so it can be easy to sort of walk past things that maybe you wouldn't have walked past in your earlier days at an organization. That's where we suggest getting a fresh set of eyes. Um, and this is not directly related to the nudges and habits of peer power, but for example, on your GMP walkthroughs, having people from other areas join you on the walkthrough, point things out that maybe you don't even see anymore because you see it all the time. We even suggest, bring somebody in from purchasing who maybe isn't out on that production floor all that often. Give them the basics of, what are the GMP requirements and have them look around with a fresh set of eyes. Of course, this is something we at TAG do routinely with our clients as well, is we'll walk along with them on those GMP walkthroughs, just with, again, that fresh set of eyes and different perspectives.
Um, One of the questions I actually wrote down and had is, are there characteristics that you would look for in hiring the right individual who might help with the peer power, right? Are there certain things that we should be trying to hire for?
Yeah, that can be tricky, but it's very important. I guess some of the things for me are that collaborative spirit, the working together with the groups. Again, if you're going to work to solve a problem or implement some sort of process, you really want to have feedback from the teams that are going to be involved. Another thing is being comfortable and confident and having some of the more challenging conversations. I always call them courageous conversations, but it's so much better to get comfortable at giving immediate coaching and feedback than to save things up and pull somebody into a conference room and talk to them. I mean, that's appropriate sometimes, of course, but what I mean is if you see somebody sidestepped the footpath, I just to right away say, "Oh, hey, come on, go back through." We wash our footwear on the way through. So being able to get comfortable with developing those relationships and provide that direct feedback.
Great, great. Um, I is that the last question I think we have? All right, I will move on. Trying to make sure I have. Okay, here we are. I wanted to remind everyone that we are still conducting our food and beverage manufacturing benchmark survey and report. You have a chance to win a $500 gift card by participating in that survey, and we've already had some winners, and so it's been pretty great. There's some interesting findings in there as well. I want to make sure you know about some of our upcoming FSMA Friday webinars with the Acheson group. We have Ruth Petran, who is joining us in November, the week before Thanksgiving. That one's going to be a little off than our normal schedule. What can we learn from recent regulatory violations and how to avoid them? Let's see the next slide. And then in December, we're really excited to bring Dr. Ben Miller and a potential special guest on how traceable are your products really. And then I also would share, it's not in the slide deck, but we have, I believe, Dr. David Acheson scheduled for January as well. So I'm excited about that one. And then if you're looking for more resources and how to figure out some of these things, or even past FSMA recordings, we have all of those stored on the more resources section of the SafetyChain website. There's industry e-guides, webinars, videos, success stories, right? And you can even get a consultation if you want and need to. So now moving forward, this is the end of the formal presentation, and we will actually jump over to Eric Hansen, our VP of Customer Solutions, and he's going to showcase in SafetyChain how you can do some of these nudges and behaviors using digital tools like SafetyChain. So he'll actually go through a couple scenarios for you in the SafetyChain system. All right, we'll flip over to Eric.
Well, that was a great presentation from Mary. I love those insights on nudges, habits, and peer power. I want to talk now about how you can have a digital multiplier to influence the behavior and cultivate the food safety culture. Digital multiplier to leverage for nudges, driving habits, and building that swell of peer power. Let's take a look. I'm going to start with a simple GMP audit. This whole discussion is going to be framed around the a GMP audit, GMP observation framework. I have this audit. My first nudge here is this audit that appears in my inbox as I'm an FSQA manager or supervisor, somebody who's responsible for conducting these audits. I get the audit assigned to me to complete at the appropriate frequency. Well, that was a great presentation from Mary. I love those insights on nudges, habits, and peer power. I want to talk now about how you can have a digital multiplier to influence the behavior and cultivate the food safety culture. Digital multiplier to leverage for nudges, driving habits, and building that swell of peer power. Let's take a look. I'm going to start with a simple GMP audit. This whole discussion is going to be framed around the a GMP audit, GMP observation framework. I have this audit. My first nudge here is this audit that appears in my inbox as I'm an FSQA manager or supervisor, somebody who's responsible for conducting these audits. I get the audit assigned to me to complete at the appropriate frequency. I would recommend for this type of thing, this is a relatively lightweight audit, at least daily, if not even shift-wise. We'll open the task. It's already assigned to the appropriate area, and we'll complete the audit. So I'm going to walk through looking at the various elements. I am shift 2 now, slipping into shift 3 maybe. We're looking at the PPE. Everything looks good. We're looking at the walls and the ceilings. Everything's clean and free of condensation. Areas clear of foreign bodies. No product-related contaminants are on the floor. We've got sink and foot baths or tidies. Or wait, I think I'm noticing actually that there are no hand towels. So no hand towels. Let's note that. Available. And this will go out in a notification. I'm going to leave this unresolved if I took care of it on the spot. In other words, if I refilled the hand towels myself, I would resolve it. But this is going to go out in a notification to the appropriate party. We're just verifying we've got no signs of pests. We've got no other issues. I'll make a submission, and that is quick, simple, and clean GMP audit specific to the area. Shouldn't take too long to do, but all the while I am nudging my employees into their appropriate behaviors by observing them, by providing them real-time feedback, and by correcting them when necessary. We now, if we're doing those audits at a regular frequency, daily, shift-wise, for example, in every area, then we're going to begin to collect some very interesting data. And that's what we're looking at here. I'm looking at what we call at SafetyChain the exceptions page. So I'm now looking at everything that failed. And this would be a regular process. So with my team, I'd have a stand-up meeting at least every shift to look at the results of this auditing for the 24-hour period for the shift, and at certain frequency at over longer time ranges. And this is showing me all of the audit findings. So I can look out and I can see that my A8, the entrance, exits, corridors, and boot wash area is an offender, right? I have more issues, more non-compliances observed here than anywhere else. That includes the hand towels that we just observed, fire exits and doors and pests, etc. So this is giving me the high-level categories that failed. And I can look down and I can see the status of each check. So you can see at this level, it becomes very tactical. And that's why we do advise shift-wise, at least daily, to making sure we're looking at what is effective, what is not effective, and we're cleaning up any findings. This is so important for driving that behavior change and building that culture, because people will begin to understand that what they do matters, right? They'll begin to see the area getting clean. They'll be hearing that feedback. And there is some satisfaction, frankly, in discovering an issue and fixing it, checking off the items on your list. And that's exactly what we'll be doing. So you'd go through this list. You would see some things were corrected on the floor, some things were not. In this case, there are some peeled labels. We requested this be cleaned up. We could go back and observe and sign off on this when we've confirmed that that's cleaned. But what we would ultimately be working our way through this checklist until we've got all the items addressed, or at least a plan for getting them dressed. And what we would see over time doing this consistently, and we would be able to trend this, is that we will be seeing fewer and fewer issues. We also have the ability through a process like this to change the points of emphasis. I don't know if you were watching very closely, but there was a couple of points of emphasis on hygiene. Are people clean? Are the hand washing processes appropriate? These types of things. These are easy to change as issues come up and emphasis arise, and you can really use this to drive behavior. Well, let's take a look then at the next approach. So this is our audit. It's a regular thing. We're going to do it, as I mentioned, every day or every shift. But with this mobile device, we have a very quick and lightweight tool that we can use to lodge an observation anytime we see it. It doesn't have to be part of a scheduled audit. Our supervisors should be out on the floor pretty regularly. This is the type of thing that actually works very well from a phone. You're seeing my tablet here, our tablet mobile interface from SafetyChain. But I can open up my GMP observation. When I notice something on the production floor, say I'm in area 2. I'm here on shift 2 still. And maybe I saw something that deserves a shout out. I saw something great. So we're not just correcting bad behavior here. We want to make sure we're recognizing and rewarding good behavior. So I'm going to capture that. It's a shout out. It's a shout out we'll say on behavior. We'll just say everybody productive, clean, and orderly. I can see I got a couple of typos there. My apologies. I just changed my keyboard. Shouldn't have done that right before the demo. So we're going to lodge our comment or compliment in this case, and you'll notice I'm providing a score. So I get 2 points for a shout out. I get 1 point for a compliance. It's a point of emphasis. They're doing the right thing. And we want to make a point of emphasis about it. And they will lose 1 point for a correction. It falls short of a finding or a non-compliance, but we're noting when we need to make a correction on the floor, and we're scoring accordingly. So I'll make that submission. Now this will trigger notifications. This can go to the supervisor. This can also go to maintenance or sanitation or whoever needs to make a cleanup. But also, very importantly, it is going to show up in our dashboard, and this will be our next stop on our team meetings, team huddles. I can see my score for the day, for example. So this is my observation score. This is the sum of those shout outs, those compliances, and those corrections. And I can see that I have a strongly positive number that I'm doing pretty well here today. I also have a chart type here we call an alarm. I can click into anything on the alarm page. Actually, let's make sure I'm picking up the latest. I can click into anything on the alarm page and very quickly see the detail. So I can see I got a shout out in just minutes ago. That is the shout out we made. And we said, hey, I showed up shift 2, did a walkthrough, and man, everybody was focused. Everybody was clean. Everybody was orderly. Everybody was productive. Let's make sure that gets noted. That would go out in an email to the supervisor, as I mentioned too. We also will be able to see the bad stuff. So in this case, I had to instruct an employee to remove their watch on the floor. Again, this is not part of a full audit, but this is just us really logging ad hoc observations. I'm able to tally those scores up by shift and by area, as you see here. So we're able to make a friendly game, a friendly competition out of it. And particularly on the shift, and if you have area-based teams, this is really great for driving that positive peer pressure. We want to be positively recognized. Let's make sure we're getting shouted out. Let's at least make sure we're not getting corrected. And of course, we do want to be mindful of the corrections that are logged. So here are the two corrections that have been logged. We had a jewelry policy violation in the A1 area, and we had a PPE violation in the A8 area. So what I really wanted to highlight here in just a few minutes was how we can deploy some very simple tools on a digital platform like SafetyChain. We're going to leverage those tasks to make sure that our appropriate staff are doing the appropriate audit at the appropriate time and logging their findings. Through the process of that audit, they are nudging all those employees on the floor into the correct behavior. Okay, we're making sure if we see something wrong, we're going to make a fix. If I can't fix it on the spot, I'm going to trigger an email notification, and somebody will come back and resolve it, and I'll have the ability to monitor that. Okay. That will all be dashboarded, and we'll have the ability to sit there and look at the performance of the day together with the team.
All right. Thank you, everyone. That concludes the full webinar. I hope to see you all in November again. And a reminder, we will send out a recording and the slides after this. All right. Happy Halloween, everyone. Bye.